Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to another Word of Gord video as I try to set up the lighting here. Maybe not the best so far, but welcome again. We're going to do some spirit world talk today. In the past few months or even years, when I've been channeling, the famous dead, JFK, Dennis Hopper, Steve Jobs, etc., etc. From time to time I get queries from people saying, why don't you talk about what happens to the average person when they die? So I thought, okay, let's have a go at that. And that's exactly what we're going to do, as soon as I get the lighting right. And that's sort of dramatic, isn't it? Sort of, yes. Oh. Should have a lighting director, shouldn't I? Ah! It's a low budget operation, though. I mean, I don't know if I can afford a lighting director. Stage manager. Anyway, there are many, dozens, if not hundreds, of old books of spiritualist communication. Some of them are represented on the net. At least one site that I know of called spiritwritings.com. There's definitely others. And I could read from many of the books I have in my library. Some of you will know that I have written extensively on the average person's afterlife in books like Eternal Life and How to Enjoy It and An American in Heaven. But rather than Gord's view of things, I thought you'd like to see some others. Now, there are many books of this nature, a lot of them out of print, but I have gone to some efforts to get a hold of them through the internet. And one of the more in the hit tradition, 20th century tradition of automatic writing, where the medium holds his or her, in this case her, hand sort of gently over a pen and paper, and a spirit hand comes on top and does the writing. One of the more famous practitioners of this was the Anglo-Irish woman Geraldine Cummins, who did many books of automatic writing and spirit communication in the mid-20th century. Not quite sure when she passed, the 60s or 70s perhaps, but these books are famous in the channeling community, and deservedly so. They are very good. Now, one of them, which I've decided to read from today, is called Travelers in Eternity, and it concerns the relationships and life after death of people belonging more or less to one family. For example, this book was sort of channeled 43, 44, 45, 46 during World War II, of course, and some of the text will represent that quite vividly. And some of the people represented are Hilda Gibbs, my sister-in-law, died July 41. Arthur Gibbs, my brother, her husband, died June 41. Nigel Gibbs, their son, died of wounds, Libya, May 1942. Harold M., Hilda's favorite brother, died 1920. Muriel M., Hilda's younger sister, died 1918. Govey, that's a nickname, Govey M., Hilda's father, died 1915. Ruth Parker, Hilda's elder sister, died 1933. Frank Gibbs, my second brother, died 1932. So you will get images of family communicating between the astral plane and the physical plane, and keeping up family communications, as it were, family ties. And the family that's in spirit you will see many references to the country home and garden that they're trying to recreate from its earthly model. They call it Wickenden. And you will get a good example, many good examples of how people have to, in the spirit world, focus and control their thoughts in order to make an environment for themselves. Now, you can actually move into environments that have already been created by others. That's quite easy to do, and many, many people do that. But you can also, if you wish, try to, use your own thoughts to create things, and many people do that. Some right away, and some after an adjustment period. So I'll be reading from various sections of the book to illustrate various aspects of life over there that I think are pertinent, useful, instructive, amusing, that sort of a thing. And you'll see why they're trying to recreate this Wickenden in spirit around 1943 from this example. Hilda then wrote as follows: I am leading a most absurd life with all these boys and Wickenden to look after, but the real truth is they are all looking after me. In fact, Eric and Tom both proposed they should look after the bills. I said there weren't any. They thought that was merely my invention. Anyhow, these young people are all so sweet to me, and I have my nigh to help in this lovely art of making a home for the young men who come hurt from the world. I think all my past life was a preparation for it. The years of pain make me understand their pain, and it is wonderful to see them brighten up and lose that lost, miserable look. But a great part of my time is spent with Nye at work, so you need not worry about me. A little further on, after saying that her, quote, landscapes didn't evaporate as they used to, she continued, Nye has brought to Wickenden some nice boys from Sicily, so I am kept very busy with what he calls our infant school, and I miss my two errand girls, you and Zelly, so much at times. No one to do odd jobs for me or finish what I haven't properly begun. It's part of my education here to do odd jobs myself. When our young soldiers come in hungry for a dinner, Nye and I just think one up. And it comes, and up it comes. Cleaning and dusting is all just the way you think of a thing here. Your mind here is like a mirror, and if you keep the light of your wishes on it steadily enough, the room and the dinner table are all spotless, not a speck of dust to be seen. But you must think in the right way, for there is a wrong way, and everything will get dusty and shabby. Govey says it's just a state of mind. Mine must have been in an awful state sometimes on earth, but here I am by the grace of God, and my having Nye puts me nearly always in the right state of mind. This all sounds rather complicated to you, I expect, but I don't know how else to explain it. A little later on, Hilda Gibbs says, so here you are in your blue room, Geraldine dear. I have such a bright idea. Bea and you ought to print a little book about how we live here. I've been thinking a great deal about it. I might be your foreign correspondent and give you news of our front, which may be dull, as it isn't a war front, and I don't in the least know how to write for a newspaper. So being in every way disqualified for such a task, I will at once begin upon it. Paradise, Purgatory, and Dante's Inferno, Harold says, are all here, but they are so different from what people on earth imagine. On earth, possession is 9/10 of the law. Nobody possesses anything but themselves in this life. That is Govey's first maxim. It made me think that poor X, who has such a shriveled, mean little self, will be in such a state of chronic bankruptcy in this world. He will wear his ugly city clothes because he only feels really respectable and worthy when he is dressed in them. You see, we appear what we imagine ourselves to be. So he will wear the habit he is in the habit of thinking about. He can only imagine unlovely things, therefore his appearance will be as unlovely as it was on earth when he makes his debut at the levee for the newcomers from the earth. He won't know how to set about making a pretty house or a pretty place, because there is nothing in himself to make it with. He will sit in a dingy, hideous club with a few of his old cronies, city men, and be utterly miserable with them, abusing the government because there are no stocks and shares to watch. There is no money to make. The money markets of the world are as dead as the dodo here. I have a feeling that will be X's purgatory, and I am almost sorry for him. Govey's second maximum is that we're all members of one another. There's a text, though you may not know it there. I will try to explain its real meaning. For instance, we M's, in spite of our faults, and we have quite a few, weren't mean or shriveled in our minds like X. So we were all able to combine together and make a very beautiful Nyman's here, which is a home in every sense of the word. One or two of us couldn't have made such a lovely place, but by being members of one another, by happily, peacefully working together, we have made a masterpiece. And I say we, because it was all done before I arrived, and because the family didn't build it only for themselves, but also as a resting place for those lately come from earth, who have been starved of life and beauty, and there it was, and is, a huge success. Nye and I are doing our best with Wickenden, but it often gives us a lot of trouble by tumbling down in parts instead of standing up, by coming to pieces in the wrong places. I think this is because I was so impatient of anything imperfect on earth. These aggravating collapses are making me learn patience, and I have every hope that by the time you come over here, there will be a permanent, solid Wickenden that will hold together and completely satisfy you. I don't want you to suffer from the effects of a small earthquake when you will be so badly needing a rest after a long journey home. About clothes, I shall write a fashion article next time. But when I wrote about X, I think I explained that we are our own tailors and dressmakers. We think of and wish for the kind of clothes locked away in the wardrobes of our memories, and they appear. But they are not always exactly as we like them. But that is due to our own shortcomings. I have pulled out such a lot of pretty things from the drawers and wardrobes that belong to my mind. Nye tells me that there is a nudist club in our world, but needless to say, we don't frequent it. Nye says the ugly apparitions in it would scare the bravest. To a great extent, people dress according to period. Sometimes, though, they break out in great gaieties of colouring and material. But we share memories, and the newly dead bring over new ideas about clothes. So we keep the past generation up to date, and some of them look rather sweet in modern dress, when of course we have always thought of them in clothes of a past period. Farther on, here's an amusing little section. Arthur visits Wickenden but doesn't live here. He finds it too boring. Hilda and Nigel are too wrapped up in each other. That's the plain truth of it. It is not that Hilda ties Nigel to the place, but she has made such a study of pleasing him that she holds him almost all the time. Arthur spends his time in catching the monster salmon of his dreams, or studying the long gallery of war pictures, and then instructing anyone he can find who will listen to him. It is quite often the mater, who is very patient and good to him. Hilda is not his pair. They will see less and less of each other because they are not really intended for each other, I don't think. Catching the monster salmon of his dreams. Take note, all you fishermen. From a chapter here called The Christmas, the Artists' Festival. Well, we had a mixed Christmas, for it was spent in 3 different places, Wickenden, Church, and Nyman's. I assume that's 3 different homes. And it was the happiest Christmas I have spent over here, so the loveliest I have ever known, and I expect you can guess why. It was the first Christmas Nye had passed into this world in which he is his real self, with no more regrets from being parted from Michael and Peggy and Tony, and losing the life he had expected to live. A number of people in this family died long before old age, I might add. For a long time he worried and wondered how Peggy would manage, and how Michael would grow up without a father, and would Tony get into trouble. But behind it was really the grief of missing them, of not having them with him. Nye never used to worry. But because he was cut off before he had lived his full life, he felt the break with the world far more than I did. But this Christmas he was quite cured. That is why I had a perfect time. Now you'll want to know, as I am the foreign correspondent, what Christmas is like over here. Well, I can only speak of what I know, and Harold says I am a shameless ignoramus. The big difference between Christmas in my world and in yours is there is no money in heaven. Heaven is in a state of chronic bankruptcy. That means there are no long hours spent in crowded shops, limping here and there, as I used to limp, never finding the right presents for the right people. We have to make all our presents here ourselves, out of our imagination and with our two hands. Two hands, one mind. Those three have to do everything. That is where the fun comes in. There is a very fine plastic material here. Your mind makes a picture of what you want to make, a child's toy, a doll, for instance. Then you breathe on this plastic substance and you mold it with your hands. Gradually it takes shape and your mind gives it color, and slowly the marvel happens. A large doll with frocks that come off and on, eyes that open and shut, legs and arms that move, and a sneeze if you squeeze it. I made several dolls here for the wicked and Christmas tree, and I had especially Ruth's poor children who had come trooping from earth, little frightened things, killed in raids or by hunger. I made them quite a number of pretty toys. Sometimes, of course, one makes the wrong article. Now I wished to give a fellow cigars, and he produced a row of leeks. His first attempt at a cigarette case for a friend of his was what looked like a turnip. I don't know why his mind ran on vegetables. Anyhow, we hung on our Christmas tree with our mistakes and our successes. We hung them all. And we laughed and laughed at the odd mistakes we gave each other. The Christmas tree was also for the young soldiers Nye rescued from no man's land of the dead. And of course they, as well as Nye, tried to make presents. So I received them from the oddest collection of gifts. I laughed until I wept. It was also charming and pathetic. These young men, who are babies over here, presented me with such a mass of absurdity. We dined at Nyman's, and there I was given the most beautiful presents. Love of the beautiful and love for me led them to produce the most ravishing things. Christmas, artist Harold says, is the artist's festival. But a clever earthly artist must be a fool and a bungler over here. For love, patience, and faith are needed in this life, as well as other powers, to create a work of art. Oh, there is so much to explain, and it's so difficult to explain, and now there isn't time, and I want to talk of your letter. I might point out that in other books of communication, there is much talk of going to the homes of deceased craftsmen and artists, and either not buying but asking for paintings, small statues, sculptures, various art objects that craftsmen and artists have made over there, and are either willing to give away or swap. There's a lot of that. And also, in more recent books, there's much talk of shopping malls, where things are for free. But understand that there are different levels of spirits and different focuses of consciousness and activity. So what you hear here and elsewhere is not what only exists, just part of the bigger picture. But understand that these are average people living a fairly average afterlife in their time. March 1444, Hilda made the following communication. If I tell you how we live after death, I shall shock all the clever and learned men, not to mention the clergymen. You see, life is so simple, at least for me over here. As Govey says, it is neither a condition of misty mysticism, nor is it Dante's Inferno, nor the heaven of Revelations. It is, at least for me, what Christ called it, and his one word described it better than legions of words: paradise. You may ask what I meant by that word. Well, I can only tell you my experience of it. Work, struggle, and failure to achieve, and even pain of the heart, play their part in our experience of paradise. But when we suffer pain, we suffer it gladly, for the sake of the joy and deep tranquility of everyday existence in paradise. My happiness, my bliss here lies in making and building up a lovely house, garden, and woods, which are a real home for my Nye and his friends. I draw from my memories what was beautiful on earth, and make pictures in my imagination like an artist, and then I shape, mold, and create like a sculptor, using my celestial body for this purpose. And then my imagination, as Harold says, breathes the breath of life into my creation, and lo, it is there. Of course I have my failures, and sometimes instead of a bed of lily of the valley, or shall we say roses, I produce a mass of groundsel and other horrid weeds. That is because I haven't worked hard enough and have allowed some irritating memory of weeds at Wickenden to fill the mirror of my mind. Then I have to begin all over again, and it requires a real struggle and effort to produce beautiful flowers here. But how proud and deliciously happy I am when roses and lily of the valley at last appear and the weeds vanish. You will ask for my experience of pain in paradise. I help Ruth at intervals in her work among the terrified, tortured little children who die before their time through this dreadful war. They cry for their mothers and can't find them. Often their little souls are injured and they are utterly helpless and pitiful. Sometimes it nearly breaks my heart to see them. Then Ruth gives me courage and I help all I can. But such pain as I experience in this work, which I rather dread, makes me all the happier when I return to Nigel and our Wickenden home. Oh, I have long times of peace that passes understanding there. For I have learnt how to be still, how to live in communion with nature, birds, and the deep heart of life. Perhaps you will say that is also like living on earth, but it can't be true. Perhaps you will say that that is all so like living on earth, it can't be true. But there is a very great difference. We do not need food, so no money is required in paradise. We replenish our bodies and earth from the great light. To live here is to depend entirely on your own efforts. If a man is selfish, greedy, and cruel, when he dies his mind and imagination are sterile. So it is as if these people were blind. They see only night or gloomy twilight, a desolate desert place about them. A sterile mind and an imagination have no power to create. So the thoroughly evil people who have passed through death's gateway live here in the darkness of their own selfish minds, or in a grey, somber world which, in the case of cruel, brutal men, is peopled with their victims. Oh dear. They dream and dream again of the tortures they have inflicted on people during their earth lives, and they experience their agony. When I asked, after a long period of happiness here, does hell exist, I was told what I have just written. When I asked, does heaven exist, I was told, not the jeweler's shop of revelations, but God's jewels, birds, flowers, changing lights, the most wonderful colors imaginable, are all here for those who have heart and imagination. In words, love and vision, in which is another word for faith. We help each other in our creation of a world. My brother, my sisters, my mother and father all strengthen and correct the defects in my love and vision, which lead me into making numbers of stupid mistakes. I have a number of things stuck in the pages here, and I'm losing my pace. Ian McLean has been staying at Wickenden for a few days at my special invitation. He is beginning to piece his memory together. That is one of the difficulties these poor young men have to deal with when they have a sudden violent death. For a time they only remember bits of the past. They usually have a clear memory of those they love deeply and those they hate. But the facts of their past life, which are untouched by strong emotion, are usually forgotten, or only half remembered by them. Some men have even forgotten their own names. Nye asked me to tell you that, as it is one of the difficulties in tracing people over here at the request of their relatives. Govey says that one reason they forget their own names is that, when they are highly strung and in the dark horror of death as it closes round them, they are so inwardly frightened, though outwardly fearless, sheer panic, that they might let that they may let their comrades down makes them long to escape into nothingness, and so they make that escape by forgetting their own names. You remember my short memory when I was on Earth. That was because of my many fears, and these I used to try and hide, and so used to play hide and seek with myself and lose bits of myself. For memory is a part of oneself. A part of my work for the young soldiers is memory hunting with them when they stay at Wickenden. As you build up a wrecked house, so you build up a human being, for the foundations are always there. I know you want to know about us, that's why I tell you these things. Just a little bit of war stuff. Nigel is away over France, and Arthur is staying with me to celebrate his birthday, the day he was born over here. He comes occasionally, but only stays a short time. Frank is here for a few days, too. He sends his dear love to Maud. He wants her to know that he is busier than ever, as he has been given a new job, a very ticklish one, he says. He is watching over certain senior officers, colonels, during this invasion. I'm not sure if that's the invasion of Sicily or France. He is part of a chain of minds that endeavor to impress these men at crucial moments to make the right decision in fighting on the coasts. And that reminds me to say to you that our messages aren't always right or correct. You see, we are still the people we were. Harold says that men and women often imagine that the dead are all popes, that everything they write concerning the earth must be true because, like popes, they have become infallible. But now Arthur is grumbling. He wants me and says B is a confounded nuisance, keeping me from him. So I had better, my dear, say au revoir. You see how human they all are? How connected, still connected to their national identities and sense of rightness and wrongness. Well, of course, the war, makes that even more plain. But I noticed when I was retrieving various people from the misty borderland between this and the other world during the Iraq War, whether it was Americans or Iraqis or Kurds, they still had their affiliations. They keep them for quite some time, maybe even a long time. It takes a mature soul in heaven to be away from national affiliations and religious prejudices and ethnic pride and ego pride even. But that all comes with time. And there's much more in this book. I see I've come up to 27 minutes. And there's some interesting stuff still here, but perhaps we'll get to that another time. There's tons of interesting stuff here. And I could, as you well know, could go on and on. So this will be part one of average folk in the afterlife, and we'll fairly soon get to part two, unless I get several hundred emails saying no more, enough already, which I doubt. So blessings to you all on this it's Canada Day for us here in Canada, but it's not Canada Day if you're in Norway or Greenland or Thailand. So blessings to you all around the world, and may you all feel at peace with your lives and your future lives, which will be coming at you like a slow-moving express train down a long hill, and will grab you up to the world of eternity when your time comes. So long, friends. Word of God. Cheers.